Okay, good evening everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Baruch Haba. We're continuing in Daf Hashavua Masechta Nedarim, Daf Yud Aleph, Amud Beis. Last night, we saw the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir holds, we do not say Meklal Lav Atashameyahin. We do not infer from no, yes, or from yes, no. Rabbi Meir holds, you need to have a T'nai Kafal. You need to spell out both stadim. Rabbi Meir holds, we do not say Meklal Lav Atashameyahin. So now we have a brisa. Tanya, we learned it in the brisa. Chulin. This food should be chulin. Ha-chulin. The chulin. Ka-chulin. Like chulin. Bein sha'oichalach, whether you say, what I'm going to eat is chulin. So clearly if you say what I'm going to eat is chulin, it would not constitute a neder. Ubein shaloi oichalach, or if you say what I'm not going to eat is chulin, mutter, it's mutter. If you say what I'm going to eat is chulin, of course it's mutter, because what's wrong with chulin? If you say what I'm not going to eat is chulin, the food that I'm not going to eat is chulin, that implies the food that I'm going to eat is a carbon. But that's also not effective, because it's going like Rabbi Meir, who holds, we do not say miklal lav atashamehin. La chulin sha'oichalach, not chulin, what I'm going to eat from you, aser it's aser. Now why would that be? The only way to explain why not chulin, that I'm going to eat from you, is aser, is because it's miklal lav atashameyahin. It's not chulin, what I'm going to eat from you. It's not chulin, but rather it's a carbon. But we just said that it's not Reb Meir. The case of chulin shaloi oichalach is mutter, because that infers what I'm going to eat as a carbon. So then why not chulin when I'm going to eat from you? Why would that be aser? So we're going to see the Ran says, take that out. Take out that line. Take out the line, la chulin sha'oichalach. See the Ran. Tanya, chulin, ha chulin, ka chulin, bein sha'oichalach, bein sha'oichalach mutter. B'sha'oichalach, when you say chulin, what I'm going to eat from you, pshita dashari, that's obvious that it's mutter, because you're saying what I'm going to eat from you is chulin. Uv'shaloi oichalach nami, and what I'm not going to eat from you also, nihida amar le, true that he's saying, hamasha oichalach, that which I'm going to eat, lo yehe chulin, should not be chulin, but rather it should be a carbon, because I say chulin, what I'm not going to eat from you. But what I'm going to eat from you should not be chulin, but that's still not effective. Why? We establish it like Rabbi Meir. He does not hold that we infer from no, yes. La chulin sha'oichalach aser. Tachia girsa b'rav hanaschos. Most gersais have this nusach. V'kasha tuva, it's very difficult. Says Aran, lama aser. Why would not chulin, what I'm going to eat from you, be aser? The only way to aser it is to say we're going to infer from no, yes. Or Rabbi Meir Leslie. Now the Ran tries something else. The Ran says, well, maybe it's different, because maybe you only need miklal lav atashameyahin when you say la chulin. So first you have to interpret it not chulin, and then you have to say bud carbon. But if you say loy chulin, maybe loy chulin means bud carbon. It's not a miklal lav atashameyahin. Maybe it's more explicit. V'chitema loy tzrichen b'hal l'miklal lav d'kivin d'amar loy chulin al karcha carbon hava lessa. It's not true. D'ha mishamachi okimna le'el masnisin d'loy krameir. Because of this, we established the Mishnah not like Rabbi Meir, because even if the gersa in the Mishnah is loy chulin, it would not be a problem. Even for loy, you need to infer miklal lav atashameyahin. Therefore, there are those who say we're not gorisid at all. Okay. The brisa continues. La chulin loy oichalach. It's not chulin when I'm not going to eat from you. but rather what I'm not going to eat from you is a carbon mutter, then your food is mutter. The Ran says, Bein bevav, bein beloy vav, asi shaper, kamosh nefarsh b'samach. Okay, so the Gemara explains, Reisha mani. Who does the Reisha go like? When it says, Chulin, what I'm not, it should be Chulin, what I'm not going to eat from you, but that implies what I'm going to eat from you is a carbon. It's Rabbi Meir, the Lesle Miklalav Atashmehin. It's Rabbi Meir, who holds we don't infer from no, yes. I am a seifa. Tell me the latter case of the brisa. La chulin lo yoichalach, which literally means it should not be chulin what I'm not going to eat from you. Mutter, that's mutter, right? That's the seifa. La chulin. It should not be chulin what I'm not going to eat from you. It's mutter. But wait a second, Rabbi Meir, if you're going to say the brisa says Rabbi Meir has another trick. You know what Rabbi Meir's other trick is? V'hatnan, we learned in the Mishnah. La karban loy oichalach. It should not be a karban what I don't eat from you. Meaning what I don't eat from you should be chulin. Rabbi Meir oiser, Rabbi Meir asers the food that you're going to eat. Why? If you say it should not be a carbon, what I'm not going to eat from you, that implies what I'm going to eat from you should be a carbon. But that's reliant on Miklal Avat Hashem. Why would that be aser? V'kashalan. We had a question on that Mishnah. Halesle Miklal Avat Hashem. Rabbi Meir doesn't hold a Miklal Avat Hashem. So why would it's not a carbon what I'm not going to eat from you, which implies what I am going to eat from you should be a carbon? Why would that be aser? Rabbi Meir does not hold a Miklal Avat Hashem. V'amar Rab Abba. Rab Abba said there's another trick. You see, the words la carbon can mean either it should not be a carbon or la carbon. It should be a carbon. So you'll say, well, even so, why would it be aser? Because then you're saying it should be a carbon, what I'm not going to eat from you. No, Rab Abba, Amar Rab Abba, nase ka'omer, it becomes as if you said, la carbon, it should be a carbon, and therefore, yehei, it should be, lefikach lo'yochalach, therefore I'm not going to eat this food. So Rabbi Meir has a chidush, that the la could mean not, and it could be is. And since Stam Nedarim lahachmir, we will interpret it in a way where if the guy's saying something, he's probably trying to make a neder. So we say la carbon, it should be a carbon, therefore lo yoichalach. So then here also in the latter part of the brisa, we should say la chulin, which we would interpret to mean it should not be chulin, the opposite of what we say by carbon, because stam nedarim lahachmer, let's interpret it la chulin, it should not be chulin, therefore lo yochalach, I'm not going to eat. Hachanami here too, hachi kamalei lo chulin lahavi, it should not be chulin, lefikach lo yochalach. Says Gemara, this brisa that we say goes like Rabbi Meir, it's a Tana that holds like Reb Meir regarding not saying Miklal Avat Hashem, but not agreeing to Reb Meir's Nase Koimer Lach, that the second statement will define the first statement. By the way, I just want to point out that even in the Gemara's Kasha, where we want to interpret it, Loi Chulin, it should not be Chulin, and therefore loy oichalach, isn't that relying on Miklal Avat Hashem? Because you're saying loy chulin, but it should be a carbon. So the answer is not really relying on it because you're saying explicitly loy oichalach. So we're not really relying on the Miklal Avat Hashem. Says Gemara, Hai Tana Savarla Krameir B'chada Upalig Ale B'chada. This Tana holds like Rabbi Meir in one halacha and he argues on him in another. Savarla Kvasei B'chad, he holds like him by one, the Lesle Miklal Avat Hashem, he does not hold the Miklal Avat Hashem, but Upalag Ale B'chad, he argues on him by one, the carbon, regarding the carbon. Let's see the Ran. The Ran Divrei Hamaschel Lachulin Loy Oichalach. No, the Ran the Ran that says V'kashalan v'halesle l'rameir meklal avat hashemehin. We're asking on the Mishnah, la karban lo yoichalach. Why would it be asur? But you're basically saying it should not be a karban. What I'm not going to eat from you, but what I am going to eat from you should be a karban. But that's relying on meklal avat hashemehin because sakadai tichta misham hachi rameir oiser. The Gemara thought this is why Rameir answers Mishum demashmale la karban loy karban b'achi kamer loy karban masha loy oichal mishalach. It should not be a karban what I'm not going to eat from yours. Hamasha oichal yehei karban what I am going to eat from yours should be a karban. But Rabbi Abba nase ka'omer la karban yehei. Rabbi Abba said it becomes like you say it should be a karban, therefore I'm not going to eat it. The kivan de le karban mashma. Since le karban is mashma le karban, it can mean to a karban. Umashma loy karban, and it's mashma it shouldn't be a karban. B'chol duchta v'duchta. B'chol duchta v'duchta. In every situation, mefarshinan, we explain it lishna begavna, a language in a way the matzi chayil nidre that the nether could be chal. V'hacha mefarshinan. Here we'll explain it. The hachi kamer. This is what the guy is saying. La karban yehei. It should be a karban. Lefikach lo yoichalach. Therefore, I'm not going to eat it. Hachanami. We should say. Not lichulin, it should be chulin, but rather loy chulin. It should not be chulin, and therefore I'm not going to eat it. Lema loy chulin lahave koloimer ela karban lefikach lo yochalach. Deisle lefrushe leman de amar de lechulin hacha de loy chulin kamar. Here we'll explain that la chulin means it should not be chulin, so that the nether will be chal. That's the first answer. The first answer is the Tana of our Mishnah holds like Rabbi Meir that we don't say Meklal Avat Hashemehin, but he does not agree to Rabbi Meir regarding that we say that the second statement interprets the first statement, and it's one long statement of it should be a karban, therefore I'm not going to eat it. We won't apply that here, that it should not be chulin, but rather karban, and therefore I'm not going to eat it. Rav Ashi says another answer. Again, the question is, if this brayso says Rabbi Meir, then why do we say la chulin lo yoichalach mutter? We should interpret it should not be chulin, and therefore I'm not going to eat it. Says the Gemara, Rav Ashi Amar. Rav Ashi says because you're mispronouncing it. You're not using a Gemara with Nakudas. You see, when I was a kid and dinosaurs roamed the planet Earth, they didn't even have art scroll. You know that? It's unbelievable. No, this was still after Ravina and Rav Ashi composed the Gemara, when I was a kid, but it was before Madura Schattenstein. And we used to use Cincino. And when you use Cincino, you realize that the Aramaic is easier than the English. So you learn how to learn Gemara. Because you don't know Queen's English, archaic English. So you have to actually try to figure it out. And then the art scroll came out, but I was already in high school. But why am I telling you that? Oh, because nowadays, even though not only is there art scroll, and my kids, you see, they could give them Gemaras with Nakudas in it. With Nakudas in it, can you imagine? So we don't have Nakudas, that's why we read it La Chulin. So if it says La Chulin, it could be interpreted Loy Chulin. But it should not read La Chulin, it should be Le Chulin. Le Chulin means it is Chulin. So since it is Chulin, you can't interpret it. It is Chulin, therefore I'm not going to eat it. The only way to interpret it is, it is chulin, what I'm not going to eat from you. Maybe what I am going to eat from you is a karban, but that's already meklal lavata shemehen, which Rabbi Meir doesn't hold up. It says, Gemara, Vashi Amar, Hada Amar, lichulin. The brayso we're talking about lichulin. When the Mishnah said, la karban lo yoichalach, and we wanted to extrapolate, well, in a case of lachulin lo yochalach, we should interpret it similarly. We would, if the nekuda was lachulin, that like in that Mishnah, but in our brisa the nekuda is lichulin. Rav Ashi Amar Hada Amar lichulin, v'Hada Amar lachulin. The mashma lachulin is mashma loy lahavi chulin ela kakarban. But in our brisa the nekuda is lichulin. Says the Holy Ran, Rav Ashi Amar Hada Amar lichulin, Hada Amar loy lichulin. Kula kula brisa Rabbi Meir. You don't have to say it's going like a Tana who agrees by one thing and disagrees about the other. No, the Tana of our Brisa agrees entirely to Rabbi Meir, to both of Rabbi Meir's shitas. He agrees we don't say Miklal Lavat Shmeyahin, and he would theoretically agree to this principle of Nasa Koimer. V'hadik Tani Seifa Lechulin Loy Oichalach Mutter, Mayrid Amar Lichulin B'Shva Tachas Halamid. Hokach Leka Lameimar Loy Chulin Kamar. It can't mean it's not Chulin. May Amrit, what are you going to say? Chulin Yehei. It should be Chulin, Mashaloy Oichal, that which I'm not going to eat from you. Ha Mashaloy Oichal, but that which I am, Yehei Kukarbin, that it should be a carbon, well that's not going to do you any good either, because Rabbi Meir does not hold the Miklal Lavat Shemeyahin. Less slay the Rabbi Meir Miklal Lavat Shemeyahin. Hada Amar Lachulin, the other case of Lachulin, Kalamer B'Patach Halamid, Umayda Amar Rav Ashi, that which Rav Ashi said, Hada Amar Lav, Hada Amar, when he says Hada Amar Lav Dafka, because there is no case of La. The Brisa is Le, and the La is a theoretical extrapolation from the case of La Karban. So, the Ha Lav Brisa hi, Ela Hachi Kamra, Ha de Boas La Mitzar, that which you want to answer, Umedamisla, and compare it, Lahach de La Karban, La Yochalach, Kushta Ka'amrit. It's true. If Yutaka said lachulin, then we would aser lachulin loy eichalach. Lachulin belamid pesucha. Okay. New Gemara. Okay? A few things you gotta know. About this Gemara. And a lot of things you have to know. There's one Hashem. Hashem created the world. There's no other Hashem. But in terms of what you need to know for this is a carbon shlamim, before you're zoyrek the dam, is aser to eat. And the reason it's aser, it's kachem. So it's davar hanidar. Okay? Once you sprinkle the blood, you're allowed to eat it. There's still going to be things you can't eat. For example, tameim can't eat it. And the matnas kuhuna are only permitted to the kohanim. We're now going to talk about a process of Nedarim called hatfasa. Hatfasa is, you don't say this should be a carbon, you don't say this should be aser, you say it should be like something else that was already a davar hanidar, something that, you say that the item, my steak in front of me, should be aser like something else that was aser through a neder. Now what if you say it should be aser like a shlamim that the blood was sprinkled? So Gemara says, give me a break. If you said it like that, then a shlamim that the blood was sprinkled is mutter. Right? But what if you didn't quite say it like that? What if there was meat of a shlamim in front of you that the blood was sprinkled, and you said, my steak should be like that? Well, do you mean, well, that's mutter, so this is mutter? Or do you mean, like that is fundamentally, and fundamentally that's a shlamim. It happens to be the blood is sprinkled, but what it is in essence is a shlamim. So, and a shlamim is aser ba'achila. Now that shlamim happens to be mutter. But I said like that, and that in essence is aser. So the Ran's going to ask, well, even if you mean like that is now, maybe it should still be aser, because that now is aser to Tameim, and the chaz of a shaykh is aser to everyone. So the Ran says a gavaldig lamdas. You ready? The lamdas is that when whatever iser there is after the sprinkling of the blood is not davar hanidar. It's just an iser. You see, when you make a neder, it's kachem. When you sprinkle the blood, it's paka. The iser kachem leaves. Any yisurim that remain, let's say aser to tmeim and aser the chaz of shak, that's stam in iser Torah. It's not it's not also your neder. So it's not davar hanodor, it's davar ha'asar. That's the Gavaldig Alamdas, okay? So that's why the shaila is, do you mean like that is fundamentally and it would be asar? Or do you mean like that is now and it's mutter? Now it still has isser, that isser is irrelevant because that's not davar hanidar, it's davar ha'asar. So the Gemara has a shaila like this. Tahar, v'tamei, noisar, upigol, asar, boy Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama asked, Harei alai kibasar zivchei shlamim la'achar zrikas damim mahu. Rami Bar Chama asked, behold, this is upon me like the basar of shlamim after zrikas damim. Behold, this is upon me like the meat of the karbanos shlamim after the blood was sprinkled. What's the din? Says Gemara, Idakamar Bahadin Lishon. If you said that exact language, behetera kamatfis, you're being matfis in a davra heter. El kagoin, that you know what the case is? The machis basars of chishlamim. You have the meat of a shlamim lying in front of you. Umachis de hetera gabe, and you have the meat of a davar heter in front of you. Va'amar zek kazen, you say this should be like that. Mai, what do you mean? Bi karai kamatfis? Are you being matfis from that item, what that item is fundamentally, and fundamentally that item is a davar hanidar? Oy behetera kamatfis. Or are you being matfis in a davar heter? Because right now that item is mutter because it's after zrikas damim. Says the Ran, behetera kamatfis, t'chsiv v'dam zivachecha, this is 5 lines on the bottom, the blood of your karbanos, yishafech, you pour v'hadar and then v'habasar teicha. The machis basar zavach shalom kamei. We're talking about the blood, the meat of a shalom is in front of you. Achaz rikas damim. After you sprinkle. Umachis de hetera gabe. Umachis de hetera. And it's lying in front of you heter meat. Gabe. Gabe kikar shal heter. So you have one meat of shlamim where the blood was sprinkled, and one meat of heter shlamim. Bi karai kamadfis, bi isurai shahaya koidem zrikas damai. Are you being madfis in the isser before the zrikas dam, or in what it is now? Comes the Ran, and the Ran asks, Vika de kashale. Some ask, afilu tim sulaymer de be'atera kamadfis, even if you want to say that you're being madfis beheter, koloymar shehei kazem mamish, that this should have the status of that, the machas kameh that lies before you, akati litzer, should still be aser. Da aser l'tmeim, it's aser to tmeim, machmas nidroi. And v'sukasha v'ikanami chazav v'shoik she'aser l'zarim, machmas nidroi. But says Ranul, didi loy kasha, di machmas nidroi. If it would be aser because of your neder roi hoshei aser, then taka, it would be aser lakoil. The Ran says, I'll prove to you the Isser now is not Machmas Nidroi, but it's just an Isser Ba'alma. Because it was Asr Machmas Nidroi, it should be Asr to everyone. Ella Dilabasa Zrikas Damim, after the sprinkling of the blood, Paka Le Nidrei. The nether is Paka. Va'asura de Timeim. And the Isser to Tmeim or the Chazav Eshoik Lazarim, Lav Mishum Nidrahu, it's not because of Neder. The Yachi Haya Asar Kol, then it would be Asar to everyone. Ela Isura, Hu Darami Rachman Ale. It's just the Torah Isser that they placed on you. Okay? That's the Lamdas of the Ran.
The Isser of a Shlomim, isn't that the Torah also?
It's an Isser, the Isser Shlomim is the Isser Kodshim. And that's the Kodshim is a Isser Neder. Davar HaNadar.
All Isser Kodshim are Davar HaNadar versus these specific Issurim of the name and
Kodshim is a form of prohibition that a person creates with his dibor. So it's Isser, it's Davar HaNadar. But the Isurim that come after the Zrikas Hadam, that's Stam and Isser Torah. Some to Tmeim, some to Zarim. If it was a Davar another, it would be Asr Lakal.
then the Chazav Eshoik
No, there's no, I don't think there's an Isser Chazav V'Shik before. I'm not sure, but I don't think there's an Isser Chazav V'Shik before. It's just Davar another. L'chayra.
What is he gaining by saying after throwing the blood? If he wants to completely prohibit it, just don't throw in throwing thing.
Ah, good. So that's why the Gemara revamps. The guy is not saying, I want my steak to be usher like that after the sprinkling of the blood, because if that's what he said, there's no neder at all. It's just talking about there's a shlomim standing in front of him. It happens to be you sprinkle the blood of that shlamim, and you say, my steak should be like that piece of meat. Do you mean like that piece of meat is fundamentally, and therefore it's referring to its state before you sprinkled the blood? Or do you mean the way my piece of meat should be like that meat is right now, and right now that piece of meat is mutter, so therefore you don't mean to make another? Okay, shkoyach everyone. Good night, bracha v'atzlacha. I have a wedding tomorrow night. That's why we. Shkoyach, kol tov.